All right. Welcome everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Young Leaders Program Whole Person Advisors and Residents session. This is being recorded for alumni to reference later. The programs of Greenhouse are built around 6 components, one of which is lifelong learning. And part of that lifelong learning component is Advisors and Residents, which provides a unique, comprehensive learning opportunity for alumni in the Young Leaders Program to grow within leadership, professional, and personal or whole person development. So the specific theme for this whole person session tonight is adaptive goal setting for personal growth. And tonight, our whole person advisors will provide knowledge and tools to help you live your best life. So let's go over our frameworks for the Young Leaders Program. The Young Leaders Program features frameworks for each of our key themes on leadership, professional, personal, and community change. These frameworks are designed as a guide to drive optimal outcomes. So the purpose of our personal framework is to provide knowledge and tools to help alumni live their best lives. Our advisors here today are exceptional people, living a life of their choosing, a life that is both planned and adapts as circumstances change, and a life of learning, growth, and connection. Being intentional about your inputs, your attitudes, and your actions can lead to these positive outcomes of understanding, opportunity, choice, community, and joy. So let's hear from our exceptional advisors. We're honored to bring back 1 advisor from 2024 and 3 new advisors for 2025. I'm scanning. Eric is here. Awesome. So Eric Estrada, hello. He is in Denver. Eric is an attorney, a professor, a published author, is a foundation director, and has been a speaker at Ignite. If you're in Eric's breakout group later, he's speaking to being relentless and the impact of embracing the process. Eric, we're happy you're here.
Hi, great to be here.
Can you share a time when you adjusted a personal goal which led to joy?
Yes, absolutely. So went to CU Boulder right after I graduated. I did a cross-country bike ride, so biked from San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, to the U.S. Capitol building. And at that point in time, when I started, I just wanted to finish. So in my mind, it was just about how quickly can I get to Washington, D.C., the U.S. Capitol building. And I soon realized that that's not the goal. The goal is in the day-to-day. So I had to shift my mindset to enjoying the process, right? The day in and day out. And once I did that, I think it made all the difference. So that's the best example I can think of.
That's a terrific example. And what an accomplishment. I bet you think about that a lot.
Oh, life-changing. Absolutely.
And then what about somebody that you've observed in their flow state?
Yeah, it happens a lot. So I'm a adjunct over at CU as well. Love to teach. And I think anytime you see an instructor who just has a passion for teaching, the challenge at hand, right? Can you lead an engaging and interesting class meets the skill set of the instructor? And you guys have experienced this. When that happens, right? We are drawn to people in their flow state. That professor, right, is doing what they're meant to do at that point in time. And so I think that's where I see it a lot, really weekly, is those outstanding professors where the challenge at hand, right, meets the skill set, they enter flow.
Yeah. That's such a unique observation. And of course, being an instructor yourself, you can notice that when other people are in that flow. All right, Lynn, our new advisor, one of the 3 for 2025. Lynn is in Raleigh, retired from an impressive corporate career and continues to prioritize learning. Lynn is a new scholar selection volunteer, and she will be talking about working the plan and leveraging spheres of influence for success during her breakout groups later this evening. Lynn, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
And can you share a time when you adjusted a personal goal which led to joy?
Yeah, and when I thought of personal goal, I probably did the one that is probably the most recent happening. My son got married during the pandemic, and we were debating whether or not to do a wedding or not do a wedding and how this was going to all work out. And being the mother of the groom, I was thinking back stage presence. And he and his bride-to-be really knocked my socks off when they asked if I would marry them, which caused me to research what that would entail in my state. And North Carolina requires you attend a certified school to
Mhm.
actually become an ordained minister. So I did that in the middle of the pandemic, never thought I would. And it's actually completely changed my trajectory of my retired life since then. So it has been absolutely glorious to be an ordained interfaith minister. And it's
What
been
an
very
honor.
fun. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't think I would be able to maintain composure, but I did.
Well done.
Yeah. Thanks.
And what about someone you've observed in their flow state?
So I don't know why when I think of flow state, I always think of athletes first.
Mhm.
And the first one that came to mind was Simone Biles. When I watch her do her floor exercise, her beam exercises, unevens, I don't care what. That woman knows how to get into the flow state. So in my mind, the flow state is when you just take all those hours of practice and just kind of move into that zone and you just block everything else out around you. And if any of you really want to understand flow state and you don't really think you've gotten there, one of my favorite movies is about Senna, who is a Formula One racer. Young man, unfortunately, stepped out of his flow state um, in the final years of his racing. He's from Brazil, but he had 41 Grand Prix races
Oh.
before the age of 35, I believe. And he had 19 of the fastest lap times ever. And he
Mm.
was the world champion 3 times out in 88, 90, and 91.
Wow.
And you could see him. He just would get in. It was like tunnel vision where the whole world just really didn't matter, and he could just focus in on doing those curves. It is a beautiful movie, and it teaches you a lot about stepping into flow state.
Oh, it sounds like a really good example. I'll have to check that out. Thanks, Lynn. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Our other new advisor is Allie Hartman. Allie is in a quiet town outside of Burlington. She's wildly passionate about making change and following her North Star. If you're in Allie's group later, you'll be discussing what to do when things aren't working. Allie, do you hail the cabs from the dirt road that you live on?
Not no. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be with you. I'm loving hearing about our fellow advisors. Lynn, I think that's so cool that you are a certified interfaith minister. Rock on. Um,
Okay.
and I hope to meet and get to know a lot more of our greenhouse community later tonight. I do live in the wilds of Vermont, but I've spent tons of time in urban spaces. And so that was why, there's a little bit of tension in my sheer existence. I work in really traditional places doing really untraditional things. I do live on a dirt road, but I have been known to curse somebody out in New York City for a cab. So there's a lot of tension in my being, and I think in all of our beings. I'll answer the first question, Jenny, and not make you repeat it and talk about
Okay.
when I changed something and found some joy along the way. I, about 4 years ago, started doing pottery. And for those of you on the call, I'm sure greenhouse scholars, the ones that I've interviewed, the ones that I know and have met, you're all pretty high achieving, high impact people. Some might say perfectionist or type A or whatever you want to kind of categorize yourselves as, but I am also that. And when I went to pottery, I was like, you know what? This is going to be the space where I'm just messy and, everything's just kind of chill and I don't really care what happens and it's just my meditative time. Well, I had like 2 lessons and then I was like, no, it has to be perfect and I have to get this and I have to do right. And I became kind of totally maniacal and obsessed with becoming a really good potter. And I lost the joy. The whole reason I was doing it was for joy. And it wasn't until maybe a year and a half ago, I kind of like went back to that space of you know what would it be like if I made this thing and then squished it? What would it be like if I made this and then tore it? What would it be like, right? And so I've been playing with a lot more organic and raw shapes and this idea of perfect imperfection. And it was only like a month ago, I was in the studio and I just realized that I was in this flow state of joy. I just was so joyful in carving my broken pieces and was really interesting that Jenny, you asked that question because I was like, I just had that moment where I was like, thank goodness I moved away from that perfectionist path and found joy in the process of doing that. And then quickly, where I've seen somebody in a flow state, I've seen some folks, you know, in their work in flow states for sure, but where I have personally borne witness to people in flow is birthing people. And so when women and people are having babies, there is not a more flow state than that you will find than those folks who are so deeply grounded and present and intensely focused in those moments in that transformation. And it's one of the most powerful things that I've gotten to be a part of, and pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's a miracle. It's unreal.
Unreal.
Thanks for sharing all that, Allie.
Yeah.
All right, Pete, a familiar face, another new whole person advisor, but familiar to other advisor teams and other people on this call in other capacities. Our founder and CEO of Greenhouse here in Boulder. For Pete's breakout group, he chose the topic of living a life of your choosing. And for Pete, that includes being an athlete.
I'm not going to talk about that. You're talking about my one thing that's in quotes.
That's right. Yeah.
Everybody, I'm really psyched to be here. I love to see some of the names of people who I haven't seen in a while. I'm sorry about this next thing. I can't help myself. I sure would love to see everybody's faces. So that's just how I am. If you're in my breakout group, that'll be a requirement. But of course, I'm not in charge, so I don't get to require it here. But maybe a strong suggestion. And then let's see. So the idea of adjusting a personal goal that led to joy. I've got two quick examples. The first is that I had this goal when I was young to live in LA. I just really always wanted to do that, you know, when I was in college and the first couple of years after college. And so I decided I'm doing that. I'm going to move out to LA. I lived on my buddy's couch for about 6 weeks looking for a job. I came back to Chicago and I told my girlfriend, hey, I'm going to move out to LA. You should, you know, come with me. And she said, not a chance in hell. And so I ended up deciding to go with the girlfriend who, let's see, I've been married to for 33 years. So that brought me some joy, and that LA goal was less important. And then the other one is that I had a misunderstanding of how to find joy at work when I got out of college. I had a goal to make $1 million, have $1 million in the bank by the time I was 30. And so my initial career pursuit really had that always in the forefront. And after about 3 years, I realized how foolish that was to have that as a driver of my activities. And I got rid of that goal. And I've been very fortunate to be doing for work what has brought me joy for at least the last 35 years, if not longer. So that was another one. And then the flow state thing. So, you know, Jenny's going to be like, God, it's a simple assignment. Why isn't he following the assignment? But I'm going to just shift it just a little bit and just say that, you know, I think the idea of the flow state is available to all of us in ways that are small and big. And so, you know, we aren't all going to be Simone Biles in terms of, you know, that amazing ability to get into that at the biggest times in life. You know, you can be in flow state writing a letter to somebody, and the way that your words come through are representative of that flow state. You can be in a flow state when you're just going for a run for, you know, 30 minutes. You can be in a flow state when you're trying to solve a problem and you get yourself so focused on the opportunity you have to come up with a really cool solution. I mean, it really is an every week opportunity. And then the last thing I would say, and so it's worth all of us trying to focus on how do we get there? How do we get so intentional and present that we can make that happen? And caring is a word that relates to that concept as well. But something that's really cool about it too is if you start to notice that it's not happening once you've learned how to do it on a regular basis, you end up being able to realize that maybe you're a little bit out of balance because you're not able to achieve that flow state, a couple of times a week or whatever. And it's a good leading indicator to take a step back and think about, well, what are my activities right now in my life? Why is it that I'm maybe distracted or a little anxious or have a little edge or whatever? So it's also a good leading indicator for what's going on and how to make an adjustment. But anyway, so sorry, not quite the assignment.
No, but that's a really good reminder that, and everybody's every day there can be a flow state, and that should feel good. Yeah. So adaptive goal setting for personal growth. Let's get into this advisor panel discussion. And I want to start with working the plan. Building plans and strategies are well known in the workplace, but they're just as important in our personal lives. Lynn, when did you create a personal growth plan, and how often do you refer back to it?
My personal growth plan came a little late in life when I did it consciously. I did one unconsciously, I think, but I was so focused on work, very much like Pete, in that that was all that I focused on. I remember when I got married, it was kind of like I was out of the office most of a month. I usually had 5 days in the office home, and the rest of the time I was on the road traveling. And my husband had a completely different view. He was really more into spending time together. I was all about, my career, being good at what I did. And then I had kids, and it was really interesting. After maternity leave, I go back to work, and he calls me up. He says, "Did you check in on how the kids are doing, with daycare?" And I was like, "No, it didn't even cross my mind." So you think I'm a lousy mom, right? I just got so into work, and it was not until um, probably about when, 4 years later, that it finally, I got some coaching from a very well-to-do mentor of mine, well-to-do meaning very professionally successful. And they challenged me to look in the mirror and stop compartmentalizing and stop um, putting my priorities as work and have those different priorities for my home life be separate from my work priorities. And that never dawned on me. And they said, if you actually take the time to integrate your priorities into one list where you're not compartmentalizing and you're putting it all together, then it's clear as to what your life goals are and your life priorities. And then I started listening to their advice, and I started practicing it. And it was amazing. All of a sudden my marriage became less stressful. It wasn't, we had to do a date night, or our home life, with the kids and around dinner time was much more relaxed. It was just more joyful. And so I actually saw the benefit of it. And then what ended up happening is my work life started helping me reinforce my priorities of my home life because they became aware of it. I stopped compartmentalizing and I started sharing priorities. So at the end of the day, in hindsight, when I reflect on it, at the end of the day, you have to come up ideally with a balanced set of priorities that integrates all of what I call your spheres of influence. So that's your personal life, taking care of yourself. That's your home life, taking care of whoever's in your home life, taking care of your work life, taking care of your social community. And then lastly, I would add giving back to the community. And those different spheres of influence will change in their size as you move through life. But at the end of the day, if you have an integrated list, right, then it becomes you personal priorities get integrated with everything, and your spheres of influence help you reinforce it. And your life is just so much more smooth sailing.
Wow. Yeah. So it sounds like work-life balance could be seen as work-life integration,
Right.
and that can make a world of difference if you look at
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah.
Allie, do you have additional thoughts on that?
Sure do. I'm a person whose plans have plans. So since I was a young person, I was building plans. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Congressional Medal Program or did the Congressional Medal Program, but when I was in high school, I did bronze, silver, and gold Congressional Medal, and it used to not be cumulative, so it was a whole different thing. But they focus, kind of like what Lynn said, on developing goals and building plans around 4 categories: fitness, physical fitness, community service, and personal development, and then an expedition exploration. So that very early on had me thinking about, okay, setting the goal, putting in the hours, because it was an hours thing. It wasn't just like, oh, can you run the mile in this much time tomorrow? It was like, you have to put in 50 hours or 100 hours or 200 hours to get to your goals. And so that sort of started me out on this kind of pretty consistent act of setting plans and goals for myself in a personal way. I think, all of the scholars, you're part of, I would guess, Gen Z, maybe a little Zillennial in there, but like your generation, if we're making kind of generalizations, tends to think about and understand the whole person a little bit more than those that have come before you. I think you're naturally better at prioritizing personal, mental health, service, spiritual life, like all of those things, than folks 50 years or even 15 years your senior. But I also think it's really important to make it a practice. And so whether it is, writing something down, or doing intention setting or vision boarding or whatever you might do to really account for those parts of your life that aren't optimized and that you want to, improve. I tend to think balance is bullshit. Lynn and I, we talk about this on the side. I think balance is a really hard thing to achieve. And the royal they, feed that to you as a way to kind of get you to think you're always failing at something. And so to me, it's not about balance, but it's about intention, and it's about integrity and living a life, that Greenhouse says it's of your choosing. And it's not to say that it's right or wrong if you focus on work more, you focus on health more, you focus on kids more. At the end of a day, a week, a year, a life, you hope that those things balance out to the right proportion for you. But being intentional about that, putting pen to paper, sharing those goals with a friend or a family member or a coach, having that sense of where you're headed is, I think, really important and a good practice. At this point in my life, I'm less rigid about writing goals out and plans and clocking hours, but I do an annual vision board exercise where I put together for the spring equinox. So it's about to start for me. Put together, some images or quotes or words that really help guide my year and what I'm focused on. And that's been incredibly helpful to me, because it's not like I'm going to get everything on the board, but over time you like, oh, wait, I did that thing from 2 years ago. It happened. I've made that happen. That place that I wanted to go, I've gotten to. And so I think that whatever works for you works. And it's an important thing to think about your whole self, as we're going to keep talking about tonight.
Yeah. Well, you alluded to some really helpful tools and ways to get started on that, Allie. Those are really, really useful things that I think are easy to apply. So thanks for sharing those. And that leads us into our next thought and question, and it's about a starting point for creating these plans. And we actually have a quick poll, alumni. You're going to see a poll question pop up, and if you can just answer that quickly, and we'll look at the answers, and that will lead Eric and Pete into answering this next question about the growth plan.
As we do this, I think Lynn had a follow-up comment.
Oh,
I
sure.
do, actually. I'd like to build on what Ally said. Thank you very much. In addition to doing the vision board, which I wholeheartedly support because I do it as well, annually, so at the end of the year, I write a reflection journal. I call it my gratitude journal. And it's amazing how much you're able to accomplish in the year. So you compare it to last year's vision board when you do that journaling, and it kind of helps you figure out, okay, how do I want to tweak this year's vision board? So I'd add that to it because I think Ally's spot on.
Yeah. Or what a good, helpful exercise. That would be really great. Thanks, Lynn. All right. Okay, here we go. Here's the poll results. All right. So most of it is in our heads. Understandable. All right. Eric, what is the best starting point for building a personal growth plan that includes short, medium, and long-term goals?
Thanks, Jenny. Great question. And you guys, as you know, you're going to get advice from a lot of different people. So I would encourage you, when you get a framework, I'm going to give you my framework that worked for me. Test it to make sure it works for you, right? One of the best things that I say as a professor is don't believe what I have to say. Go out and test to see if it's the truth for you. This is what's worked for me in my life. It starts with passion. So when I was in your shoes, I actually wrote uh, my undergraduate thesis on leadership. And this is what I came to after doing that project, which is individual passion, vision, action, reality. If you do a lit review on leadership, right, and whether you read KMP's book or Stephen Covey's book, generally you get to these key themes. You're a unique individual, right? We grew up in different cities, we have different parents. You're so unique. Based on that uniqueness, you have different passions. So to answer Jenny's question, it starts with passion, from my view. And then the leadership step comes into play when you formulate a vision based off the passion. And I know you've done this, and I'm just putting a framework to it. Then you start to take action towards that vision to drive reality, right? Then you will accomplish that vision. I'm in the CU ecosystem. I follow Coach Prime on Twitter. This is what he said, I kid you not, last week. He said, quote unquote, from his morning tweet, this is what he does every day. He says, vision enhances thoughts, thoughts produce action, and action establishes results. Almost word for word, my framework, right? We share a common framework because this is the thing. Same rules, right? Different context. So same rules, whether he's building an elite football team, elite players, or for us, right, you're leading towards your dreams, whatever those are. And when you think of the action step too, when you start to take action towards the vision that you've created, I want you to think in terms of exponential growth. As soon as I saw this, it made all the difference in my life. You are incrementally doing things every day to get to where you want to go. And he would call it, and I call it stacking days. And just know as you stack days, right, as you work towards your vision, you're going to come to the inflection point in the exponential growth graph that then it all takes off, right? Where everything seems to be easy. We had talked about flow. You will experience flow as you make that turn, but just trust the process. We'll get to this in my session, the day in and day out, knowing that that will come. And finally, I'm going to pull in two more friends. If you don't believe me, right, that it starts with passion, listen to Jack Harlow's song, The Chosen One. And I want you to listen for who comes in that song halfway through. And then I want you to listen to Steve Jobs' commencement speech at Stanford University in 2005. Those are two friends of mine, right, who would say it starts with passion as well.
That's solid, Eric. And we might see you coaching at CU someday. I think that's what you're getting to.
Best case, he brings me in to do a guest lecture.
Well, Pete also likes frameworks. I don't know if you want to talk about frameworks here, Pete, or the short, medium, and long-term goals, but curious what you think about all that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I also thought, Eric, that you were stumping for a job there on the coaching staff, but there's nothing wrong with that. I just, none of us here can probably help with that. No, he does have, as you probably know, it looks like he's claiming he's going to fill 2 spots of coaching this week. So it's sort of exciting to see what he's talking about. So let's see. At my starting place, I want to build on some things that Lynn and Ally said. I was so excited to hear the way you both talked about your answers to that question. I find so many times that people are working so hard to compartmentalize things, to get things to not intersect, to find this place I'm not familiar with called balance. So some of the ways you guys talked about it was just so awesome for me. And so I appreciate that. And I think that feeds into my answer of how to build a plan that works for you, how to think about the idea of short, medium, and long-term goals. To Eric's point, how to transition from passion or vision to actions and results. And then, of course, how to be adaptable. So that my starting place is this idea of there's only one life. There's not a work-life balance. That's the work-life balance. It's life balance. If you want to keep the balance word, by all means, but it is that there's only one. And so that's my way of thinking about the fact that what I'm really doing is I'm always trying to prioritize the right activities in pursuit of my intentional goals. Allie used the word intention, which I think is a really important word. And that balance, if you like the word, moves all over the place all the time. When you have 4 kids under the age of 4 for 7 months, like my wife and I did, you are moving your balance in direction of those 4 kids. When you start a company and you are underfunded for that first 2 years, that balance is moving toward, the 6-day-a-week work week that I had. And so there's all kinds of examples, but how does that fit into the idea of a plan? So first of all, like Eric said, it's different for everybody. And so you got to kind of pick things from different people and figure out what works for you. But for me, it's very sort of straightforward. I think about there's me, in no particular order. There's my relationship with my wife. There's my relationship with my kids. There's my friends and extended family, and there's my work. And I have a plan every year for all of those, Lynn's word, I'll steal spheres of influence for me. So, and then I structure that plan under each one of those areas by key drivers. So key drivers of the life I want is overarching. I misspoke. So for me, the key drivers are sort of things that don't change that often. They're really have probably for me now been the same for probably 18 to 20 years. By the way, first time I put a plan for myself together was when I was about 20 years old, and I've had a new annual plan created every year. And so then, what do I want things to look like is the next component of my plan in 2 years, and it's 1 to 3 sentences. So now I have a very sort of, back to the prompt from Jenny, I have a very sort of kind of, it's not this year's plan, but a couple years down the road, what do I want it to look like, and not any detail. And then I also have this idea of what I want it to look like in 10 years. And again, it's just 1 to 3 sentences. I'm not trying to have detail. I'm trying to create a picture for how I envision my life that can change all the time. But it's that sort of, stair stepping. Where am I headed? What am I trying to do? And then I finally get to my annual plan, and I have a summary view of the year. So I have a summary view of 2025, what I want that to look like for me at the beginning of the year. It's like 3 sentences. And then I have, to Eric's point about action, delivering on the things that you want to really happen, my actual action plan. And that's broken down by those groups. Me, what I want for myself and my wife, my relationship with my kids, my relationship with my friends and extended family, and my relationship to work. And so then within that, I have some components, and I'm going to talk about it in my breakout group a little bit more. I'm going to ask some questions in my breakout group, but I have this idea of themes. I have a goal, only one by each of those areas. I think to have a bunch of goals, you can, in 1 year, you can have a goal, and then you can have a bunch of actions that kind of lead you to that goal. So I look at that plan at least once a month, and I'm sitting, just focusing on that plan. And I think about where I'm at with the plan, and I think about what I can adjust, where I can, what I can appreciate about how I'm doing. I think it's really important always to appreciate, the progress you're making, regardless of how little or how much you're making. But so that's how I think about connecting the idea of a plan to short, medium, and long-term goals. My plans are all annual plans. Same for business for me, by the way. I just don't believe in long-term detailed plans, but I have a picture that is the medium and the long term.
Thanks, Pete. It must be a really nice sense of accomplishment just to get the plan down on paper for the first time, too. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment in itself. And when we're doing that, that's a great accomplishment, and it feels good, and it gives us some vision of what's ahead and how we need to get there. But then there's setbacks. There's things that come up that are unexpected. So we've all dealt with setbacks. This is another alumni poll that will pop up real quick. How do you respond to setbacks? Have you adjusted how you face setbacks to better support your growth? If you want to answer this real quick, alumni. All right, Jesse. And super. That's great. Everyone has something to relate to here. So when we encounter a personal setback, how do you typically respond? How might you refine your approach or adjust your plan to better support your growth? Lynn?
Probably the biggest setback I had is later in my career. I had worked at a corporation for quite some time and had been spearheading the development of 2 different new businesses for the corporation. And so I was on my second tour of duty doing this, and it takes about 5 years to set up a new business. And we were integrating 9 presidents and 9 different businesses into one new division and coming up with an integrated model. And it took a lot of sweat equity and a lot of time. And once we got that built, the CEO of the corporation said to me, "What would you like to do?" And I said, "I'd like to run this small little consulting practice over here and get that established and start that up." So I did. I worked on that for about 2 years, staffing it up. We finally hit break even. We were having a blast, and lo and behold, the corporation decided to pull the plug, even though we hit break even, and dissolve the team. And I was just, all the wind in my sails basically were completely knocked out. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I wanted to stay with the corporation or leave. So, my rule of thumb, after I kind of step back, I pause, I reflect a little bit, and I push myself really hard to not take it personally, because it was not personal, it was economic at the time. And even if it were personal, it's still that reflection and just stepping back and saying what fits, what feels right is the best way I find to kind of double check yourself on setbacks. To me, it is an opportunity to basically become a phoenix, to go ahead and evaluate what was working, what wasn't, and how do I want to come out of the ashes with this. So and I got, again, mentoring advice from somebody when I asked them, how did they become successful in their career? And it was networking and keeping your contacts warm. So if you meet somebody, reach out to them 2, 3, 4 times a year and keep that contact warm. So I immediately started networking. And I ended up leaving the corporation. I opened up my own consulting practice, and it grew it into, I was getting global clients, and I was absolutely the happiest I've ever been. And I actually ended up collaborating with somebody that challenged me to write the 2 books that I authored in the business space. And when you write a book like that, and Eric knows this because he's an author, it adds credentials for your clients to kind of feel like it is you're worth taking a chance with you if they're meeting you for the first time. So in conclusion, I would say really step back, do the reflective work, become an observer. So you pull out and you don't take it personally. And then once you've kind of done that evaluation, that reflection, you just network and network and network, because you just never know where a good idea is going to come from. It could come from your kid's teacher. It could come from somebody in the community. It doesn't have to be anybody in your line of business. So you never know where that leads you, and you just keep on following what fits. Kind of goes to the way I think Pete was talking about that flow, the way he was describing flow. It's like what feels natural, and just kind of go with that. Go where you're loved.
Mhm. That's good, simple advice to follow. Yeah, thanks for sharing that story, Lynn. Pete, how do you refine your approach and adjust your plan to better support your growth after a setback? And we are running a little bit over time, so if you can answer this somewhat concisely, I'd appreciate it.
That seems like a personal comment, Jenny. So a couple things. First of all, you know, the old-fashioned thing about know your audience. You know, I know quite a few of the people on the call. You know, we've got some experts in overcoming setbacks on this call. So, you know, I have that in mind. But this piece of paper I'm going to show you is 40 years old. And I've got a really sophisticated way that I've, you know, been able to keep it fresh, which is Scotch tape. And this is in my wallet. And this has been on my wallet for 40 years. Is that backwards?
No.
Okay. So this is something that I believe in really strongly. So, you know, every adversity has within it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. And I found that to be true in every single circumstance. You can't really come up with an example that's not the case for me. Sometimes it's a little harder. You know, both my parents are dead. I think that that was challenge to figure out what about that was an equivalent or a greater benefit. I think greater, probably not, but there were some benefit from that over time. You know, I think it's really important as a concept, even if it doesn't for any individual apply every single time. But in a general sense, my life has been about the idea of positivity. I believe, I think that it is rare that I wake up and don't feel pretty excited about what I'm going to do that day, even if I'm not excited about the tasks. There's an old Inuit Indian saying that all that matters is the great day that dawns. And I believe that is true. I think that, you know, you get up and you sort of say, here we go, let's go do it. And if you have the right attitude, then all of a sudden the setbacks, and I know you guys know this so well, right? So just as kind of, it's just really more of a reminder. The setbacks are just learning opportunities. They push you. You put them somewhere where they become useful later. You move forward. You don't dwell. You stay positive. And then, you know, the only other thing I'd say is that we all, every human being, needs to work on the idea of believing in yourself, your intuition, and your decision making. And so that's an opportunity we all have every day that is about not only setbacks, but about how to have them happen less often. You know, basically. But anyway, like I said, you know, I know we've got a lot of overcoming setback experts. And I did try and speed talk Jenny.
I noticed you picked up the pace at the end there. Yeah.
Try my best.
No, those are really good tips. And it runs parallel with being relentless, you know, believing in yourself, like you said, is such a big part of being relentless. And what does relentless mean to everybody? I think there's different thoughts on it. And I think that Eric and Allie might have different thoughts on it. I'd like to hear Eric's thoughts on being relentless and what it means to you personally and how it can be applied to achieving goals.
And I'll try to speed it up as well. So as Pete so eloquently said, most of us have a shared experience on this call. We face some big obstacle as a youth. So for me personally, grew up on welfare. Single mom had me when she was 18. And so I know, because you're on this call, you have made it through to the other side of that obstacle. So I know, based on that alone, your DNA is essentially like Hamilton's, right? In the play, you are nonstop. And so I would just encourage you to continue to go with that, because I know it is part of who you are. And as I think about being relentless, it's a mindset, right? And generally it's a growth mindset that, as Pete said, no matter what you face, you're going to say, I learned, I grew, right? And that growth mindset is so important as you think about being relentless. Coincidentally, Pete, we did not plan this at all. This is purely coincidental. Guess what I've had in my wallet for 40 years? A picture of MLK, and on the back it says, "I have a dream," right? I've had that since 1997 because, again, it's about, for me, vision and continuing to work towards the goals that you have. That is being relentless. You see behind me things that I've accomplished in the past, right? Degrees, gubernatorial appointments, taking companies public. You know, it's only on this wall, the one wall that I face every day, a quote that says, "Obsession beats talent," right? This is in the past, that is in the future. And so you continue to drive to the future. And again, for me, it goes back to passion. If you love something, you will be relentless, right? This is from my buddy Steve Jobs. He said in that commencement speech that I encourage you all to watch, "If you don't love it, you will quit, comma, as any sane person would do," right? And so again, I really think if you look at people who have been successful, it is because they had a love for something so badly that when tough times hit, they were able to get to the other side. That was the only difference between what he said, society considers successful and unsuccessful. And generally, this is the last thought, as you accomplish those visions, right? Generally, the visions get bigger and more challenging, as they should. And because you love that, you will drive towards that. That's what I have to say.
Excellent, Eric. Thank you. Allie, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I had my wallet next to me. And so what I've had in I was not planning to share this, but since you both did, this has been in my wallet for probably 18 years. And it says, "Do all the good you can by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you ever can." And it's titled Goodness, and it sits in my wallet, and there's a little note on the back from a friend. I have so much to say right now, and I know we're short on time. So I'm going to talk in a couple of sound bites. Number one is that there are setbacks, but there are lowercase setbacks and there are uppercase setbacks. Like forgetting your shoes on your way to the gym for your run is a setback. Losing your leg is a capital S setback, right? Like, not getting the job that you wanted is a setback. Being fired and losing your house and not having a safety net is a capital S setback, right? There's different setbacks. And so not all setbacks are the same. And I think that, we live in a time in a world where there's a lot of shoulds, right? I should do this. I should do that. I should want this. I should be that. And I think the biggest thing for me that I'm still working on at 41 years old is like, I got to stop shoulding all over myself. What do I need and what do I want? And when Eric was talking about passion, it's like, what do I need and what do I want? Not what should I do? Not, what should I do to run faster or be skinnier or make more money or fall in love? It's like, what do I need and what do I want? And getting really clear on those things. And so when I think about being relentless, the only thing I think relentless is kind of like capitalist bullshit that we're taught from an early age that really doesn't, like, y'all are relentless because you're still breathing, you're still here, you've overcome so much that I, in my life too, and I know we all have, because being a human is hard. But the only thing that I think we should really be relentless on is the constant pursuit of loving ourselves. And if we can figure out how to really love ourselves and like care for ourselves and take time to be whole and be happy and be healthy, then those other things figure themselves out, because your goals at 22 or 26 or 35 or 50 are not, they're going to change. And so what you're being relentless about and what we're going to talk about in my session is like, how do you pivot? How do you strategize? How do you reassess? How do you say like, you know what is it time to quit? And quitting has a really bad rap, but like quitting is essential. And reframing how we think about quitting and letting go of control. And so I think sometimes, I know for me, I was a very elite athlete. I have had a lot of intense and relentless moments in my life. And then I became chronically ill and was really, really sick for a really long time. And my whole life got flipped upside down. And like, it looks different to be relentless in my day-to-day now than 5 years or 10 years ago. And I can only imagine that you all have already had hard things happen and you will have hard things happen again. And there are some times that like you need to pause and you need to take that beat and you need to like let yourself recover before you rocket to the next thing, before you're relentless, right? You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to be human. And being human is messy and hard. And so I think that, again, like the only thing I want to become relentless in is like really truly loving myself and figuring out how I can do all that good. And the only way I can do all that good is by first figuring out how to be good to me. And that's hard because I didn't have that embedded in me as a kid, right? And so figuring that out is a life challenge, but I think it's a good one to take on.
Absolutely. And if you ever forget, you can look at your goodness poem in your wallet. I think we might
can.
need to have a wallet sharing session at some point. Those are really strong pieces of advice, Allie. And I know we've got 2 minutes where I would like to hear your sound bites again on what you mentioned of pivoting. You know, these decisions come up and they're really hard. And how would you go about making these changes when you need to abandon and shift your path?
Yeah, I think in that instance, community is essential, right? Community is what really feeds us and supports us and holds us and advances us. And the best decisions that I've ever made have not been made in a vacuum or in a silo or in isolation. Maybe I've gotten the spark on a walk in the woods by myself or in an elevator on the way up to my office, or, you know, but like truly having the courage to change that thought into a belief, into an action, into an outcome, right? That community. And I think, you know, when we have to figure out how to pivot, it's really scary because, again, there's all that stuff that we carry about failure and success and goodness and worthiness. And so it's really essential to have a therapist, a best friend, a mentor, a coach, whatever, whoever, wherever it comes, your neighbor, your partner, but to have people in your life that can be collaborators and conspirators and accountability buddies, right? Like people that hold you accountable to what you truly want and need. Again, not what you should do, but what you want and need, because those are really different things. And deprogramming yourself from that should, I think, is real hard work, but other people can see you sometimes better than you can see yourself, and they can help with that pivoting when it needs to happen, because it'll need to happen again and again, and sadly again.
Right. Yeah, you can't say enough about having a strong community around you, even if it's just one person.
Yeah.
Excellent panel discussion. Thank you. A lot of really, really strong takeaways that can be applied. I'm sure our alumni have a lot of follow-up thoughts and questions. Like doing the silly thing. So if you have a prop or some hand gestures or a funny face that makes you laugh,
one this time.
let's see it. Tyler, I'm
guess, Steph
sorry,
Curry.
you usually have a pet and it's going to be harder
I
on your phone.
know. That's
Okay.
okay. Yeah, it's so sad.
Here we go, silliness. Bring it. Oh, Lynn, good move.
Oh, Sarah, there's your kitty.
That was so good, Lynn.
Yeah.
Pete, I'm loving the beard. It looks great.
Thank you.
Jenny, Jamie, thank you.
I thought that, but I was too scared to say anything. So thank you for saying it.
And I'm loving Jamie's bangs.
Lynn, you stayed as a cat. You stayed as a cat for a minute there, and I was like, oh no, Lynn's gonna be stuck as a cat for the next like 2 Zooms she's on.
Well, that was packed, 2 hours packed full of wisdom and actionable takeaways, all centered around adapting your goals for personal growth, adaptive goal setting for personal growth. Thank you for sharing all their wisdom, advisors. Jesse, if you want to show the themes, I'll let you all, I'm going to do the awkward moment of 20-second silence so you guys can browse these themes that we went over tonight. To summarize that, I would say, you know, growth and success come from aligning priorities, setting intentional goals, embracing setbacks, fostering community, and balancing drive with self-compassion. So you can spend some more time with these amazing whole person advisors, as well as our leadership and professional advisors on April 29th, the All Advisor session. And I'll let you know what else is coming up next in addition to the All Advisor session. We also have our trimester 2 coaching application deadline coming up at the end of this month. So if you're not already signed up for personalized coaching and you're interested in that, please email me and we'll get you the coaching application for trimester 2, which is May through August. We have Ignite right around the corner. And you can scan that QR code to go to the Ignite landing page and get some more information about what's outlined currently. We'll keep that current as we have more information coming in. Alumni, we really love your feedback and would appreciate if you would put some time into a very quick survey. That helps us improve these sessions for the future. Advisors, you as well. I will send you your feedback survey tomorrow in another email. And if you want to connect with anyone individually, please let me know and I'll make an introduction. But thank you. Thank you for sharing your evening with us and for embracing this learning opportunity. And I hope you have a really great night. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Bye, guys.